Hi everyone, welcome to IMAGI-NATION TV, week 17, episode 18, featuring designers of the theme of brave goals. Brave stands for big, risky, audacious, visionary, and endless goals. Hi, my name is Lily Lerman, and I'm 16 years old, born and raised in Sydney, Australia, and currently living in New York. Today we're here to talk about brave goals and what that means to us. To me, a brave goal means to give your all to something, to be passionate, and when you embark on whatever it is, whether it's painting tiny little paintings or being a neurosurgeon, you give that your all. And I think that is what the core of a brave goal is. I'd like to quickly introduce my fabulous co-host, Maddie Webb.
Thank you, Lily. It's so wonderful to have you on the show today. I'm very excited to work with you. I've worked with your family in the past, but today I get the opportunity to work with you, and I'm very excited about that. I hope our viewers also had the chance to catch yesterday's alumni special. It was a great show and truly inspiring to see the AIM alumni out in the big world achieving their brave goals, including our wonderful AIM host, Charisse. I think one thing I took away from yesterday's episode was that we are all on our own journey, on our own paths, yet we are all striving to achieve something. And some of those things are just out of reach. And it's about the work you put in to achieve those things that you think that you may not be able to achieve, which is where the gold sits and where we achieve our brave goals. Ahead on today's show, we are joined by AIM mentees Tiana with the story of how she became a hoodie connector, and our wonderful panel, Justin, Favela and Romi Kupfur, who will ask to tell us about themselves a little bit later on. But first of all, I want to get to know Lily Lerman a little bit more. So Lily, are you ready for a 60-second challenge?
Oh, I think I am.
Great, well, let's go. Start the clock. What is your idea of perfect happiness?
Good food and really great music.
What is your greatest fear?
Probably, I don't know, vegetables.
On what occasion are you out of your comfort zone?
Eating vegetables.
What would you like to see humans do more of?
Be empaths.
Which living person? Was that more empathy?
Yeah,
right.
Definitely more empathy.
The next question, which living person do you most admire?
Probably my parents, and then and also Anna Wintour. I think she's amazing.
Great choice. What is your greatest extravagance?
Anything I don't buy out of a thrift shop or on sale at Zara.
And last question, what do you consider to be the most overrated virtue?
Instagram followers.
Great, so do I. Awesome, Lily. That's the 60-second challenge, but I do want to go into a little bit more about what you've been up to.
Of course.
You've been working here in Australia during a pandemic to support the international student community with the Queensland Premier Anastasia. How is that, and how did that come about?
Well, it's kind of I never thought I would be where I am leading this project, because initially I want to go into health in the future, and I wanted to support at-risk women that were international students, obviously because of the COVID crisis. And so when I reached out to, my family's connections within the Queensland government, they came back and they said, hey, we need someone to front this. Would you be willing to do this? Would you be willing to be the face of it? So it kind of bloomed out of me focusing on a really small area of what international students needed, and then me realizing, hey, nobody else is taking on everything else they need. So I kind of became the face that way. But it's definitely been like a whirlwind of and such a great time and so much fun. So
it's really incredible, Lily, to see someone at your age doing such brave things and achieving brave goals. I've known you for a little while, and you are not afraid to stand on your own 2 feet and set brave goals for yourself. What has inspired you to do this at such a young age?
I think that especially my generation, we no longer have an excuse not to do things anymore, because we have the world at our fingertips. And I think that YouTube is my university and Google has been my teacher, and I'm able to access, unbiased and real information, and really do research and educate myself and not have to wait on other people to educate me. So I think that I'm part of a generation now that starts doing things that they want to do, starts their goals, starts, cultivating their ambitions at a really young age, because you can watch a YouTube video on someone who's done it before. And so I think I've been inspired by so much more than past generations have been able to be inspired by. But I also think that I've been able to educate myself and put myself out there with the use of social media and the use of, Google and YouTube and everything. So I think I have to put it to my generation for allowing me to have brave goals. And then I think also growing up in a family that, allows people to have brave goals is really important as well. So.
Yeah, that's pretty incredible. And I think that you're just doing such incredible work, and you're really kicking down barriers, and it's just so awesome to see you put in that good fight for the international student community. Do you have any advice for young people who doubt themselves or think that they may not be able to achieve these brave goals that seem so out of reach? What would you say to them?
Don't underestimate your power. I mean, I never thought that I was going to be fronting an international student initiative or, talking to politicians about it, or even being here. So I think don't ever underestimate yourself. And I promise you that the law of attraction is real. If you believe in something wholeheartedly, and if you believe that you'll do it, you will. And then don't be afraid to have an opinion and stand your ground, especially in a world where people will try to stomp out young people's voices. So I think that's the advice I would give. Not that I really know what I'm talking about.
It's great, and I think that young people connect with other young people and the advice they give.
Yeah.
It's really great. Thank you so much, Lily. Now I'm going to throw to a video from Tiana Magaldi to tell us a little bit about why she's a hoodie connector.
Hi everyone, my name is Tiana and I am a 19-year-old Gunai woman from Latrobe Valley. Before I start this video, I'd just like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we are gathered on and pay my respects to my elders past, present and future. So I was invited here today to tell you guys about why I became a hoodie connector, or why I applied to become a hoodie connector. The first reason being is I was with AIM a couple of years back through school and I loved every single minute of it. I loved getting out of my comfort zone, being able to meet new people and just having a really, really fun time. Like learning and school isn't always fun, but knowing that I had AIM coming up like in a couple of days, I really did look forward to it. Another reason was the more I read about this hoodie pays rent, the more I fell in love. From being able to sell merchandise to getting money back from what I sell to be able to pay my rent was a really, really cool approach to, life, especially with what's going on with the COVID. It's good to be able to put a little bit of positivity back in the world. I think that's all I've got time for because I don't know what time I'm up to with my video. So yeah, thank you.
Wow, that was incredible. Thank you for your support, Tiana. Now it's time to jump into our designers section, which will be a panel discussion. So let's say hello to them after this video.
Okay, I think we're ready to have a few comments from the YouTube chat line. See if you've got any questions, check in the comments to see what we can discuss. Let me take a look.
So we do have a couple of questions on the YouTube line, which we might get to as our discussion progresses. You probably will see that I've changed.
Oh, someone's changed their hoodie.
I like a bit of an outfit change. It's you know, a little bit of a Mayweather special. I've changed. I'm going to jump on the panel and join our fabulous guests, Romi and Justin. And I'm going to let you, Lily, host our panel discussion because I know that you can do it.
Oh, I hope so. I hope so.
Let's do it.
Alrighty. So today I'd like to introduce Justin Favela. Would you like to give us a bit of an idea of who you are and what you're doing in the world?
Sure. I am a visual artist. I live in Las Vegas, Nevada, and I make a lot of work about my identity as a Latinx queer person living in America. A lot of my work surrounds the idea of cultural appropriation. And I also like to make work that's really celebratory with lots of color and in the style of piñatas, because I see the piñata as a symbol of like Latinx culture, but then also of the idea of the, you know, commodification of this global idea of what being Mexican or Central American is. So I'm an artist and I'm also a podcaster. I have two podcasts, one called Latinos Who Lunch and the other one called the Art People Podcast.
Great. And so would you kind of like to delve into what a brave goal means for you in your field in particular?
Oh my gosh, I think the bravest thing I've ever done is become a full-time artist. That was 3 years ago this month. I went on a residency in Miami, Florida, and I decided not to go back to my regular 9-to-5 office job. And I never thought I could do that. And it's just because I'm a product of being born and raised in Las Vegas, which is a place where we cater to tourists, you know, much like any big city, really. And so ever since I was young, the goal was, all right, I'm going to graduate high school, maybe go to college and get a job at a casino, you know, get my pension and retire at 65. You know, that was the goal. And I started working casinos when I was like 18, and it just wasn't for me. And once I found art, I said, all right, I got to figure out a way to make a living doing this full time. And I took the leap, and especially coming from an immigrant family, that was really hard for my parents to understand. Like, what are you doing? You already have a good job. Why are you making piñatas for a living? Are you going insane, right? And so it was I'm still to this day having to prove myself time and time again for taking that risk and you know, having these brave goals.
Right. So I think you've kind of answered my second question in that question.
Okay.
But I kind of want to just vibe off of what you just said. And I feel like, you know, talking about coming from immigrant parents and coming from parents that don't understand art, right? So how do you portray the fact that your work in itself is being brave, right? But how do you incorporate that bravery or what, even some of the words that our acronym stands for, into your artwork, right? Does that make any sense? Or
I think so. So I think when I first was making work, I was thinking about, okay, well, you know, I was really trying to like please my professors in art school or make things that I thought people would want. And so tying it back to my family, I think after I graduated college, I started thinking like, who am I making this for, right? And so thinking about the audience, like who is my audience as an artist? Because you can go to art museums, you can go to art galleries, and to be honest, a lot of artwork that's in those institutions is just for people that go to museums and people that work in museums. It's like art for art people. And so I really started to focus on my family. Okay, I'm going to make something that my grandma understands and that she finds interesting. And if my grandmother and my 8-year-old cousin like this work, to me, it's a success, right? And so what that means is going against maybe more critical, snooty art people and saying, you know what, I'm valid. My experience is valid. And just because it's not referencing what you wanted to reference, it doesn't make it less fine art than anything else in this museum, right? So that was something that I'm still trying to get more confident about.
Oh, I love that. I think that's so important. And to be honest, I find snooty art quite boring. So
yeah,
I'm
right.
kind of over it.
Yeah.
All right. Well, is there any kind of last things you'd like to say about being brave, or any advice you could give to budding artists about brave?
Oh yeah, I think, you mentioned it before, this whole generation of YouTubers. I am obsessed with online tutorials. One of my favorite YouTubers is James Mansfield. He's a drag queen who does wig tutorials, so you can watch him make wigs every night. Those are my stories. I watch them at night.
Yes, I love wig tutorials. When they pluck the baby hairs, oh, I love wig tutorials. When they make
the rooted hairlines, I'm like, how do you do that? I gotta try it. But seeing those tutorials online, I see a lot of younger people afraid to fail because they don't want to show their failures. But I think it's important that if you're going to take a risk and really do what you want to do, know that more than half of the time you're going to fail, and that's okay. You're going to learn from those failures, just like those drag queens learn from those horrible wigs that they make, but then they just stack another one on top and you're good. You learn, right? So get ready to fail, and that's okay. You're going to learn so much from that.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I definitely think our generation needs to learn how to take the L a bit better. That's for sure.
Yes.
Okay. Does Romi want to come on and just introduce herself and her art and everything?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name's Romi Kupfur, and I am a theatre maker, director, and producer. I mainly make contemporary physical theatre, sometimes with text, and I work a lot with young people, and all people really, but also young people a lot, creating art together and collaborating together. I also make a lot of art that stems around my cultural background. I'm Jewish, and I'm third generation immigration. So I also have a lot of background kind of around my cultural identity, and I love to explore that in my work and also in the collaborations that I have with other artists. Something else that I'm also really passionate about is making spaces that are accessible and inclusive for everyone. And I think that there aren't enough of those spaces in the world, not just in art. And that's something that I always try to do with no matter who I'm with at all times. And I think that's really important.
Great. That's so great. So what does BRAVE, the word or the acronym, mean for you in your field?
So I guess for me, being brave is also like being true to myself. It can be quite scary to expose yourself to others, and especially when making art, it's so public and it makes such a statement. And I feel like whenever I make something, I'm really exposing a piece of my soul to the world, and you have no control over that. So I think any kind of way that you partake in that, in anything, in any artistic, even if it's just writing a story at home that maybe no one will see, but you've still made something new. And I think that's super brave to put who you are out into the world.
For sure. I love that. So I kind of want to tie back to what Justin said earlier, coming from the fact that I feel like you both kind of show your identity and your culture and your family through your art. So I wanted to kind of ask you, how do you show your culture, and, you know, kind of dive into more how you show your culture and family in the same way that Justin does?
Yeah, sure. So I think there are like two kind of main ways. Like one is in just like process and ritual in like daily interactions, and then one is in like performative outcomes. So, you know, I think for me, like, you know, a big part of Jewish culture is about food and family and connection and community. And so for me, you know, having my cast over for Friday night dinner and sharing a meal together is really important, and is really like vital to the whole rehearsal process, even though it's just dinner. But actually for me, ritualistically and connecting to my culture and my weekly rituals is really important to share that meal together. In terms of performatively, I have made a show about, like, you know, works take so long, years and years and years and years, and you're continuously developing them. But in 2016, I made a show called Singing Swallows, and it's a Holocaust performance for young people aged 9 and above. So my grandfather lived through the Holocaust, and his extended family perished in the Holocaust. So for me, as third generation Holocaust survivor, it's really important to give voice to those stories so they continue, and we continue the understanding of what happened, and also we remember those who sadly were not able to still be with us. Yeah, so it's quite an emotional thing for me, and it was a really difficult piece for me. I think that was something that I continue to be brave with that piece, actually, because it is really exposing like a very, very deep part of who I am, and, you know, my parents and my grandparents and all the people who came before me. But I also think that it's a really special thing to connect different cultures and to, you know, give young people the privilege of hearing the messages that these Holocaust survivors gave to me, which is about hope and connection and being brave and
Absolutely.
being proud of who you are, you know. And so it's a wonderful thing, and it's incredibly fulfilling when you're able to be brave. I think that you feel very fulfilled inside.
Right. And kind of bouncing off of what you just said, what do you think is the most imaginative, right? Because like a Holocaust play can be very imaginative, right? But at the center, it's realist, I would assume. So what's the most imaginative, or maybe that is the most imaginative, I don't know, but what is the most imaginative art that you've seen or done or performed?
Oh, I think that like most of the art that I see is incredibly imaginative. And, you know, that's what I think is also really important when you're an artist, or you're trying to be an artist, or you're thinking about being an artist, or whatever. You know, like, everyone is unique. We all bring something different to the table. No one is the same. So no matter what you do, as long as you're being true to yourself, I think that's imaginative. Because going to the theatre or going to a tiny shed, or however you experience art in all its different forms, when you go and see an art piece that someone has done that you can see is so true to who they are, and so true to the art that they're exploring, or how they're feeling, or what they're looking for in the world, I think that's amazing, and it's super imaginative, and you feel it. And I feel grateful to be based in Melbourne, where there's so much art like that here.
Great. Well, I think that was really informative. I'm super excited to kind of chat with you later on. Now, Maddie, do you want to come in and kind of give us a rundown of who you are and what you do? And
Yeah, sure. My name's I recently work in the TV media industry, both Channel 9, NITV and SBS. I've most recently been working actually closely with Lily's dad on a film for the last 6 months and in Queensland. And now I'm back in Sydney working for AIM, producing a feature-length film called Imagine, which was amazingly co-written on this TV show. So it's cool to be on the flip side of things and be a guest on the show and a host on the show. I feel like I'm ticking all the boxes here, Lily.
Of course, of course. So, Maddie, how do you incorporate Brave into what you do?
Yeah, I think ever since I was a little kid, I always dreamt bigger than that I could even imagine. Like I remember when I was a young person, in primary school, dreaming of what I could achieve in my life and thinking outside of the box, and never ever putting boundaries on myself. Never thinking that anything was too far or too great or too hard for me to achieve. And I've really stuck with that throughout my life. And whether it was, I wrote a letter to a school to when I was a very young kid to accept me into the school, and I was the first ever Indigenous person to go to this school. That was such a brave goal for me. I was offered many other schools at the same level at this school. It's a big school in Sydney, and all these other schools offered me a position, but this one school didn't offer me a position, and I made a choice in my mind that I would have a goal to get into that school, and I'd make them change how they approached having Indigenous students or Indigenous scholarships. And that was a huge goal that I really hold close to my heart, because I know that when I first approached that situation, it felt like it was never possible, and I actually got a hard no, and that, sorry, we don't do that. And I took that and I challenged that, and I wrote them a letter, and I made them change their minds. So that was a huge, brave goal for a 13-year-old kid. But I continue to live like that in my day-to-day life.
Right, and I think that's such a. I mean, I already know that story, obviously, and I think it's so incredible that you were able to kind of push. I think that's kind of the theme of this conversation, right? Like push past the boundaries and the kind of blocks that were put in our lives and how we got over those. And I think it's really interesting that all three panelists here today have experienced oppression in different ways, and how do you incorporate that in what you do today, right? And so how do you feel, how do you incorporate your culture and your family into what you do?
Yeah, I've always had two goals really in my professional life, and that's really to be able to work in a workplace where culture is important, and where I can make a difference for my people, for Indigenous Australia voice. And that's the reason I really chose to work in the media. It was because I wanted to tell the stories that weren't going to be told and be the voice for those who weren't going to have the chance to be heard. And I still feel that the work that I'm doing now with AIM is very much along that road. We're creating a film about a central character who, goes on this incredible journey, and a self-discovery, self-reflection journey. And this character in our world today wouldn't really have the spotlight shone on them a lot. They wouldn't have the chance to tell their story. Their story would already be written for them. And so I definitely feel that my goal, my brave goal, to be able to be the voice for the unheard, is still happening with my position here at AIM. So, yeah.
Great. And what do you think the most dareistic thing that you've ever done within your career? Or brave?
One of the most bravest things was to actually, there's a couple, but to move to Queensland and work for your dad. I think that to me, it's such a big moment in my career. I think it was just such a, I could never have imagined my younger self, you know, working so closely with Baz and just being, you know, so closely connected in terms of a working relationship. And I think that sometimes as kids, or, you know, in a lot of cases, people think that what you want to achieve seems impossible, or it seems like it is too far. I say to people that nothing is impossible. I truly believe that things are closer to us than we imagine, and closer to us than we think. It's just about putting in the work, and also making good relationships, and making sure that there's a path where you have goals, and where you're able to surpass goals, and then you create bigger goals, or you go on to create these brave goals that seem like they're so far down the path, but you actually get there quicker than you think. But yeah, that was definitely one of my experiences working, you know, with Baz. It was great.
Oh, that's great. That's definitely good to hear. I just wanted to open the floor to all the panelists before we wrap up, and see if you guys had any questions within each other, or anything you wanted to comment on what you guys said.
Maybe we can start with Justin. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I mean, I think a common thread between our work is, I guess, kind of finding our self-worth, expressing ourselves. And there's also kind of themes of accessibility that I really like to talk about. You know, and that can be, you know, from film, television, theater to visual art. This idea of like, who is this art for? Who is this work for? And how do people consume it? You know, and the way that I think about accessibility is through materials. And so a lot of the work that I do, not only is it in a response to my identity, my heritage, my family, but I also like to make stuff out of paper and you know, tissue paper and cardboard. Because if you walk into a museum and you see that on the wall, you immediately know what that feels like and the limitations of that material, and kind of stretching that and really pushing people's imaginations, I think is like a huge thing. And so, you know, and I also really like the thing that Maddie said about making new goals. Cause like, for example, I never thought I would show my work in a museum, right? And I've already done that. So now what's next, right? And so always thinking about, okay, I got this goal. Now what I'm like, I'm not gonna retire, you know, I wanna keep working. I wanna keep being creative. So yeah, I think everybody touched on some really great topics.
I was also going to say, similar to that, but also what Maddie, what you mentioned about like it being important that that your culture is part of your workplace. And I think that that's something that is exciting and vital as we move forward, that we, and actually something that is a brave goal, I think, to strive towards, is to what spaces are we creating, you know, for others, for ourselves, and who are we meeting, who are we working with, and really, you know, sharing these parts of ourselves in a way that is safe and supportive, where we get to know more about who we are and what's important to us, and also who the other people we're working with and what's important to them. And I think that's like a pretty beautiful thing to be able to know more about, and you know, experience everyone's kind of different cultural identities together. And that's when you're at your best, when you're true to who you are.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I just want to say it's been such a pleasure having these convos with Romi and Justin and Lily. So thank you so much for joining us today. We have had some comments online on the YouTube page. And Lily, I just want to just give you a shout out. They're saying, wow, what a wealth of knowledge. And they love that age is not limiting you. I think that that's a really positive thing. And I think that people, youth especially these days, are becoming the powerful voice in our world, as we see across across the world with protests and social media and the advancement in technology. There's no limit on who can be heard. So I just wanted to say thank you so much. Also, thank you to Lily for co-hosting with me today. It's been such a pleasure to have you on the show, Lil. I also wanted to genuinely thank Tiana for sharing her story, and also let our viewers know that the show will be on the same time tomorrow. So join us on IMAGI-NATION TV tomorrow at the same time for our special keynote. Have a good afternoon.